And come on. Good evening. This is a special meeting of the Charter Revision Commission on this 18th day of August. And I'd like to call the roll, please. Mr. Clerk.
Commissioner Borup,
Here.
Commissioner Capello,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez, currently absent, Commissioner Minor, currently absent, Chairman Harpy,
Here.
you have a quorum.
To stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, public participation on agenda items. Via Zoom application or phone, you have a 2-minute limit for speaking. If you call in, it's 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward and state your name and address.
We have one individual in attendance. They have not raised their hand to speak at this time.
Okay. Comments by commissioners. Are there any comments by commissioners? Okay, review of commission supply draft report and draft charter language. I just had a protocol question. Do we have the item for approval of minutes, or we're going to do that at 9? Okay, number 9.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Review of commission supply draft report and draft charter language. James, would you like to walk through that for us?
All right. So back on June, oh God, what was it? What was our last day there? June 22nd. The commission did approve its draft language and charter to the town council. Based upon your recommendations to the council, they reviewed the charter and came back with 10 additional items to review. Some of them we had discussed during our discussions on our proposed language and proposed changes, both in our draft markup that we had presented to council, as well as the draft report that we had supplied them as well, with our reasonings and intentions for the proposed changes or reasonings for not changing them as requested. So now that council has had the opportunity to review what we presented to them, they had the foresight to look at a couple of extra items that they hadn't thought about previously. So they are requesting just a quick review or recommendation back to them. This will be your final report. So this will also, once you adopt this report, this will be your final meeting and the termination of the commission. It's been a long time coming so far. It's been a very long road. It does seem sometimes. So at that point, those are the specifics to our last piece. So
can we, everyone I hope has their printout of what the council was requesting for changes. Where it goes to review recommended removal of membership amounts from charter language for various commissions. And would you review that, why we got to this point on that in terms of not leaving numbers in the charter, Mr. Clerk?
I will.
The logic behind that.
Let me actually pull that document up because I thought I had it on my screen, but unfortunately I do not. So here we go. There.
The commission will recall that, and the public will recall that we've had many conversations about lack of volunteers as one component to reviewing the number of members on a given board or commission, unelected board or committee, I should say. And there's been problems both on the Democratic side and the Republican Party side of finding candidates to come forward to serve on these various bodies. And one thought, an early discussion, I don't know who prompted the idea, that maybe the clerk himself, that there was an availability to the council to get the membership number count out of the charter. The language would stay in the charter in terms of authorizing a certain board to do certain things like Parks and Rec. But what would get deleted is like 11 would, is that correct, come out?
Correct. The proposal would be to remove with 4 certain boards currently. So the Board of Assessment Appeals, the Board of Parks and Recreation, the Development Commission, and the Commission on Aging. Removing the specific language on 3 out of 4 of those does not require any or very minimal action by the council. The one that would require action is the Board of Parks and Recreation. While they are currently in our town code, they do not have membership listed inside of theirs. And actually, I broke down a quick overview of all the different boards and commissions to be able to show you. The Development Commission, the Commission on Aging have their own membership that is part of the code itself. And that'll break down the same membership that we have currently outlined in the charter. The commission's listed in the code itself. So even if we chose to, as you can see from these, they haven't been changed since 1992. If we chose to change membership, we still wouldn't be affecting anything because the charter would override the code itself. So the membership would still, even if we changed it to 7 members for the Commission on Aging, the charter would still be listing as 9. So by doing this, this allows the council itself to make changes upon request by the commission or the staff liaison without having to open the charter completely back up again. The town attorney reviewed these with the council during our public hearing and special meeting to review on the 20th of July. At that point, he recommended remaining in the charter the Town Plan and Zoning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as the there's
Development Commission?
The Development Commission, correct. Those 3 he indicated based upon their statutory requirements. While I may not agree with his reasoning behind that, the membership isn't codified in statute. We create our own membership. So there's nothing that I think would have precluded us from removing it. But at this point, it's not an issue that I would be willing to take to the high ground.
So unless the council moved to make a modification by ordinance on these eligible committees, those numbers would stay constant in the charter, or there's no number in the charter for membership?
There would be no number in the charter. It would be contained within the code. Okay. So right now, as I've shown on screen, and you actually have a packet in front of you, which starts with chapter 8, boards, committees, and commissions. A good example to be able to view it would be that second page that I've got showing right now, which is the Commission on Aging, shows their membership consisting of 9 members appointed by the council for 3-year terms and expiring on November 30th. Now, our charter does not get that specific. Our charter indicates that it's a 9-member board, and that is it. The code outlines specific appointment requirements and time periods. So having the 2 pieces in here makes more sense to remove the numbers on the charter side, leave it in code itself, not in the charter, so that if something needed to change, we could. And like I said, the only one that we would run into a problem with, and even planning and zoning, like I said, that one is the same way. When you get to Parks and Recreation has no membership. The section in our code itself for Parks and Recreation is specifically about the oversight that they have over parks currently. So that doesn't preclude us from creating the same or similar language that we already have in the charter. In this case, if these were to pass, 1 by you, 2 by council, and 3 by the electorate, this would then require, and we would make that recommendation upon passage, the council should review and create an ordinance in conjunction with the existing Parks and Recreation Board that meets their requirements.
And that's the only one that's an issue
That's
on?
the only one that we would have any issue with. The Conservation Commission, Conservation Commission is the one, the third one. Development Commission, we talked about taking out, which is funny because that's statutory as well. Conservation Commission has their members in the code. Development Commission has their members in Chapter 8 of the code. And Commission on Aging has their membership in the code itself as well already. So we don't have to worry about causing an issue with membership to the boards and commissions at that point, other than the Parks and Recreation Board. We can already have draft language in place ready to go upon the passage of the charter and have it all passed pretty quickly. We wouldn't have to take a long road to get to that. We could have those discussions ahead of time.
So I think it's fair to say the Parks and Rec one has gotten the most discussion.
I would agree with you.
And there's concern by some people there that they didn't want to really jeopardize the 11 at all. So we wouldn't, by any action we take this evening, if we were to agree to these changes, that would not jeopardize that, because of
nothing would change with their makeup until the new code went into place and the new charter was passed.
And that would go through an ordinance.
An ordinance
So
process.
they would have public participation on that item.
Yep. The council would receive the introductory ordinance, schedule the public hearing, receive comments, and they could pass that within a 2 to 3 meeting process.
Okay. Are there any commissioner comments on this portion before we get into any of the other language requests?
Joe, I have a couple of, Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. One is, so I see on the form that it's the Board of Assessment, Board of Parks and Rec, Development Commission, and Commission on Aging and Disabled, which would have their membership removed from the charter. What are the boards or commissions whose membership will remain in the charter? I know you went through it briefly, James, but I missed all of them.
Nope, that's okay. Of the remaining 3, it would be the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Conservation Inland Wetlands Commission.
And what's the rationale there for leaving them in when we're taking out the rest?
The rationale from the town attorney was that they are statutory commissions, which I don't understand the reasoning behind that, but he felt that keeping the membership made more sense. I would agree that the statutes themselves do not call out the amount of members or how we place those members, whether it be elected or appointed, or to the quantity or of alternates or regular members that we apply to those boards.
All right.
Go ahead, Kevin. Yeah.
The other concern I have, of course, is with the Board of Parks and Recreation. We've heard members of the Board of Parks and Rec talk about the importance of having a large board for all the work they do. And I know early on there was some concern about them meeting quorum. I'm not sure if that's still the case. And I would be concerned about pulling that out of the charter when, we haven't heard really from current members of Board and Parks and Rec on, whether they're fine with that. And certainly it places the whole issue of the Board of Parks and Rec up in the air, because as you pointed out, James, there currently is not by ordinance anything with regard to membership language.
Correct.
Right. We did have testimony from Mr. Patelico, the chairman of the Parks and Rec, as you recall. And we did have Mr. Don Woods, who had suggested, and I'm not saying he spoke for the whole entire board. I don't know that he did go to your point, Kevin, for a more reduced committee in size, which I think is fair to say he retracted on because of what came through from this commission.
I think part of it was from the commission, part of it was based upon discussion and seeing memberships actually showing up. Yeah. That sort of put it to the side for them. But I do see the benefit of having it by ordinance, not removing the Parks Board completely from our charter. It's still a required board. The council would still be required to create the membership of that board.
What would happen if we were to leave the 11, just as an example? What would happen if we were to leave the 11 as is with language that the council, through a process of getting input and et cetera, could then elect to move it to an ordinance?
They could still create the ordinance, but the ordinance would read 11 members. They wouldn't be able to amend that, but the charter would override it.
Right.
And that's one of the benefits of having the board enumerated, but the membership in code.
Are there any other towns moving in this trend? Is this a trend line, or is this?
You're going to find throughout the entire state, volunteerism is down, no matter what you do. So if you're going with larger boards, you're going to have to find more members to cover those boards. And most people do not have that extra time nowadays to be able to meet that demand. So it does give the ability just to make those amendments, to bring the board membership down if it was necessary. But remember, that still requires an ordinance process, a public process. So if the council were to go forward with that and they received a large outcry saying, no, you shouldn't be changing the size of this board, that's not going to pass. Mm-hmm. That's the thing to keep in mind. If we look at it and we have that conversation with Parks and Recreation and they say, let's go with 7 members, we want 2 alternates from each party, they've got a 4-member board for a quorum now. Somebody's not available to come in, they've got 4 alternates they could sit at any point to make sure that they could keep meeting, but they could still keep all of their membership in some format. So there's a lot of different options for it.
In terms of what? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just think for my mind, it's too up in the air when it comes to the board of Parks and Recreation. I mean, I wish that we had more public participation in this meeting so we could hear from either members of board and Parks and Rec or something about this. But, removing it from the charter and leaving it where right now there's absolutely nothing in our ordinances which specify membership, I'm uncomfortable with that at this point.
Okay. We'll come back to these as we go to make a decision on them. I just want to run through these as a whole once we keep moving.
Could I make one extra suggestion to that then, if the commission's nervous about that? Part of your recommendation about the possible removal of this one would be requesting that the council create ordinance language prior to a vote on the charter itself. That way, prior to November, that language would already be in place as an 11 membership board. And then if the commission chose to come forward to the council to change it, they could amend that at that point if the charter were to pass in November.
I did have I sent a copy of my packet on all of these things to Don Woods, and he did acknowledge that he got them today. So, not that he said he was going to come again, but he did get it. And I did speak to Mr. Patalico previously. And we got his position on it on tape when we talked to him. Okay, we'll come back to those very salient points on that one. Let's talk about the all police officers, the dog warden.
Sure.
On page 2.
So back in 2000, is it 2012? I'm sorry. And back in 1998, the General Assembly made a change to the dog warden statutes to make it uniform across the state. So they changed it from canine officer to animal control officer. Our charter hasn't caught up to that. So this was noticed after the fact, and it's only being requested to make the language in our charter match the state statutes. So I have given everybody a copy of it. I have it on the screen, as well as what the substitute bill was, as well as what the current statute is in existence. And that one is a very simple reasoning behind it. We'd simply be replacing dog warden in 2 locations with the statutory animal control officer.
Are there any comments or questions on that one? Okay, let's move on to the Development Commission.
Certainly. Oops, gotta find my sheet. All right. Page 2, Development Commission. Under 608, the commission recommended additional language to the council for enumeration of duties that are allowed under the state statute. The council felt that these type of duties made more sense to have them placed into the code versus the charter directly. Again, as they change over time, we would have to open the charter in order to make that change versus updating them throughout the code itself by an ordinance procedure. So the recommendation they had suggested was the removal of the language we added, which is highlighted in blue at this time on the screen, and having that moved to the existing ordinance under Chapter 8.
So that's not going to an ordinance.
That would go into the existing ordinance
Okay.
under Article 8.
And they understand that they couldn't in any way adjust statute language describing the duties of the Development Commission, because that's all state statutory language that we.
Correct.
Okay.
The difficulty would be if the state were to change that language, we'd have the old language in our charter. We'd have to open it in order to change that versus the code.
Yeah.
We update that language, similar to what we're doing with the dog warden language right now. We'd be able to change that a little bit easier. So let me just.
Been there for some time in the state statute, unless a legislator were to conceive.
I don't think much of it's going to change, but so you'll notice on screen in your packet, Mr. Chairman, on page 4 on the back side, you'll see currently our code itself calls out the establishment under the charter and having the duties as provided in general statutes of the state of Connecticut as revised. By adding the additional language, we'd still be referencing that, but we'd be enumerating them so that they'd know what those duties are.
Okay, are there any questions by commission members on that one? All right, can we go to page 3?
We'll jump past that bottom one for a little bit. Yes, I agree with you.
Huh?
We do have the one on the bottom, but we'll get back to shall and may in a little bit.
Yeah, the shalame, shalala. So,
Section 412. As the council began discussing the allowance for a private meeting in issues that may be sensitive for removal of an official that's appointed to a board or commission, it came to our view that there have been previous times where the minority leader as well as the mayor are the same person sometimes. Same party, I should say. So the recommendation that came forward was the mayor and a member of the opposing party. That way, you've always got both sides on the meeting itself to be able to relay back to each of their caucuses prior to a decision by the entire council. So in this aspect, we'd be moving or amending mayor and minority leader, and we'd be changing that to say indicate the mayor and a member of the opposing party to review the matter.
okay. Seems to make sense.
Yeah, it wasn't something we had really thought about so much, but believe it or not, actually in
But I think Roy's
2017, we
went through
had
that,
that
didn't
same
he?
issue.
Yeah. Are there any questions on that item by commissioners? Okay, can we go to the Department of Senior and Disabled Services on page
Certainly.
3?
So section 710, as part of the discussion at the council meeting, they discussed whether or not to make the language in our charter consistent with the name of our Senior and Disabled Center. Now, I will say that the municipal agent is a municipal agent for elderly persons. That is the statutory title for it. But they are requesting to add in municipal agent for elderly and disabled persons instead. The town attorney didn't see an issue with utilizing that language. It's more consistent with how we handle things within our town. So that would be just a simple, small change.
And that's driven by the director?
No,
request,
actually,
or-
that was a discussion by the counselors themselves. I believe Counselor Rada may have brought that discussion up.
All right, and where does the council address the concern about not having a quorum for this body in a year, as was the testimony of the director?
This one,
Commission on
they
Aging.
did, they addressed that one under the first item we were discussing. So 608 is the part of that consisting of 9 members as well. If your recommendation comes forward to remove that membership, then we would cover that under the charter, it's under the code itself.
And they have how many members there now?
They're currently a board and commission consisting of 9 members.
Which they have not been able to get 9 people or
Right.
whatever the quorum is.
Is not that specific section, that's under 608.
But she directed her concern about not being able to get the quorums.
Right.
Is that correct?
She did, and that is one of the reasons on page 1 that the Commission on Aging and Disabled is a recommendation for removing the membership amount.
And then the council, at what period of time in its deliberations would it correct that?
That could
So-
be a discussion after the charter has passed in order to make the change, because currently the charter as well as the code are identical. So we could change the ordinance ahead of time, but it would not go into effect unless the charter
I
passed.
guess my own, to kind of come off of what Kevin was talking about, I mean, what would be the comfort level for the commission not knowing where this is going to go for how long, given the concern discussed with us by the director that she can't really function the way she should because she doesn't have appropriate numbers.
I agree.
And we can't hook any language. We either accept the requested changes or reject the requested
Correct.
changes. Is that correct?
Correct.
As they handled ours?
Yeah, we don't have an amendment process to this one. It would be,
Yeah.
we're looking to recommend that they accept the changes as they recommended to you, or you're going to deny that proposed change. But the 2 sections we are talking about is the disabled center versus the disabled commission. So that's what, right now, we're on the disabled center itself.
Right. If we can't make any specific amendment, can we at least forward a comment of
Oh, yes.
concern by commissioners about these issues and that
Yes.
we trust that they'll be resolved, that we encourage they be resolved because of,
Should the passage of the charter happen, it would be the recommendation of this commission that the council, in consultation with each of those commissions, meet to discuss appropriate membership and a possible amendment to their ordinance.
okay, now we did agree that we would go with a smaller board for Parks and Rec, for example. What
We did
have?
discuss a 7-member board on that.
7-member board. And there was a question about majority, minority, and there wasn't alternates that they wanted to see,
Right,
at least Mr. Patalico. That was rejected.
correct. We
We're
put
kinda like
forward the
in limbo
recommendation of
country
7.
on 2 of these.
So on our recommendation, under 605, we made it 7 members, 5 shall be from the majority and 2 shall be from the minority. That
Right.
was our recommendation as part of our draft charter. So still 7 members,
Yeah,
still 7
they had a
regular
different
members.
concept for 7,
Right.
Mr. Patalico and the alternates.
If we were to remove it, we could effectively let them decide and have that conversation with the council. Do you need 7? Do you want 7 with alternates? Do you want a 10-member? Do you want an 11-member? What makes the best makeup? And I understand their reasoning behind it for their volunteerism and everything that goes on with the organization. But in that aspect, if we pull that specific language out of the charter, that gives them the ability to sit down, have that conversation, build an ordinance that meets their needs going forward.
But at the present time, we either have to accept this or reject it.
Correct. So if we chose to, say, deny the Board and Parks one and accept the other 3, our recommendation of a 7-member board is what would go to the voters. If we
Oh.
chose to accept their recommendation
go.
of removing it, then that would be upon the council to place an ordinance in place, which we could do prior to the passage. Have the 11-member board in place and still do an amendment to it should the charter pass, to be able to amend it if they felt it was necessary.
But for the public's edification, just to repeat that, because you're making a very important point here, if we were to reject the Parks and Rec change, then it goes back to our
7.
original recommendation.
7 members, not 11.
Interesting. Okay, you had pointed out there was an item on the bottom here about.
We do have a discussion, but let's put that one to the last. So on the bottom of page 2 is a review of a definition for shall and may to include within the charter. So we'll keep that to the end.
It's that good, is it?
So next section for us would be under 403, organization. In their discussions, the Councilor Rada actually indicated that the language.
This is on page 4, correct?
This is on page 4, correct.
Okay.
There was some language in the charter where it says shall have 1 vote, but only 1 vote, which seems to be somewhat repetitive. So she was looking to have that language changed. For some reason, the but and the and, sort of like the shall and the may, tend to be confusing, I guess. So changing that to read, shall have 1 vote and only 1 vote on each matter voted by the council. It's a very simple change, but she felt it was important enough to mention.
And this is under the organization.
Correct.
Grouping. Have there been problems?
There have not been any
Aware of?
problems that I'm aware of on this. I can't think of a time when both the mayor and the deputy mayor haven't been available. We've determined somebody and the council has ever had an issue saying that they would get 2 votes. I think everybody knows they get 1 vote on every matter.
Yeah, it's an interesting concern because I don't know where that would come from. At least the people I know on the council on both sides are pretty tough people. And if you tried to take 2 votes,
You're not getting it.
you'd leave in a hurry. But this is something that they agreed on as a whole, I guess. Huh?
They did. This one did come through as a passage by the entire council.
Okay. Are there any commissioner questions on that one? Okay.
All right. Next page. Obligatory referendum and ordinance.
Page number 5.
Number 5. Such a fun section, as we all remember. I do agree with them on this one. The last line of that is a very long run-on sentence. And I do believe the breakup of that will make much more sense to the public and to the staff. So what's proposed is that it will read and shall be to finance a street, sewer, or other improvement to be paid for by a special assessment and not general taxation, period. We would remove provided however that, and the new sentence would start, such bond or note authorization or special appropriation for emergency purposes shall require no less than 6 affirmative votes of the council. It doesn't make a lot of sense as to why they said provided however. We're talking about a special appropriation process. Why the extra language was in there, nobody knows.
Okay. Did the definition of special appropriation survive their cuts? I can't tell by this that the attorney.
The standing
town attorney
appropriation
gave
one,
us?
no, that one we had removed out. That one, what you see in blue on your sheet
they
is
took
what
the-
we recommended.
So even though the finance director wanted a definition of special appropriation and was thrilled to have it, it's gone?
Yep.
That's interesting. Not making it easy. I'll tell you, they are not making it easy.
No, this has not been an easy
And
process.
that was sort of a critical component. I don't know what the motivation would be to not comply with her request on that.
Yeah.
because she's back to the same situation she was in before, quite frankly.
I think the upper part where I believe we indicate it as a, the current year appropriation, I think that sufficed from what I understood. And the breakdown
And
that
it
we
would,
did
should
to
read
create the
general
separate.
fund appropriation and expenditures. And that word is missing.
Where are we?
Up on the top, the 1.50% of the general fund appropriation. It should be general fund appropriation and expenditures is what the language we approved.
I will look back on that one. I don't
Unless
recall
it
having
came out
that.
somewhere.
Let me check our 408. 6, 7.
I mean, this fund for the public certification is driven by revenue sources to pay what's in the budget, police department, education, you name it. And those revenues are bulk, the taxes, property taxes and other fees associated with income for the town. Now, the contingency of 10 or 15%, whatever the council's using today to try to build a reserve of money within the general fund, unencumbered monies, is also measured off of this fund because this is the catalyst of income versus to pay for what is in a working budget. It's also a leverage of how to determine what you should go to in excess of the general fund appropriation expenditures to go out to referendum. All of these concepts were done in the and I'm not arguing with anybody, I just rehearsing the history. All of this was done in the presence, she zoomed in, the finance director. And she found these to be important to her and other towns that are doing it. And that the flat rate wasn't tied to anything. It was a throw a dart.
Right.
And turned out to be inadequate for many years, many years prior to the 10 years change in looking at a charter revision.
Correct.
So I'm a little concerned, I'm a little more than concerned that we seem to have a disconnect here on what we recommended. And I think we explained it well because I sat there through one meeting.
Right.
And I tried to encapsulate it on points that Kevin made, Nancy made, and others made throughout the 6 months or however long we've been at it from the minutes that I had, and bring those to a focal point. So I don't know, there can only be one charter revision commission. There can't be two at once that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and I'll leave it at that.
I will do a little research. I may go back through some of the audios to confirm that we didn't take something out by accident.
Good.
That way we're sure that they are getting the complete language as we approved. Because I'm actually looking through right now on some of the minutes just to confirm our discussion. We talked about the audit committee, compensation packages, strong governor, strong mayor. I will review that
Okay.
section for us
All right.
and verify. If there is language, I will make sure that it is back in there as it should be. But where is the commission on the striking and rewording of that last sentence?
You're talking about such funding?
Correct. Such bond
Such
or
funding
note.
shall conform to the financial parameters of not less than the one that you're talking about that would go for an appropriation to an ordinance?
The lower part, the changing, removing of provided, however, that and starting the new sentence as such bond or note. So the bolded, underlined at the bottom, third line to the bottom of that section on page 5.
Such funding? Is that the sentence?
The sentence actually begins at a referendum shall not be mandatory when such bond or note, but what we're looking at is The sentence ending at general taxation, period, provided however that is removed, such as a capital letter would start the new sentence, such bond or note authorization.
I'd have to go back and look at the original language in the charter.
What you see on the sheet on the bottom in bold, that is the current language in the charter.
The provided.
Provided, correct. That actually is that complete run-on sentence which they're
Referendum shall
speaking
not
about.
be mandatory when such bond or note authorization or such special appropriation shall be for an emergency purpose to protect the peace and health and safety, or shall be to finance the street, sewer, other improvements to be paid for by special assessment and not by general taxation. Do we have a Philadelphia lawyer in the room when you came up with some of this stuff? Provided, however, that such bond or note authorization or special appropriation for emergency purposes shall require not less than 6 affirmative votes of the council.
So the reason I think she put that there is because that last sentence is specific to the vote of the council on the action itself. Right. And it does make sense to split it that way. Why they kept it as a run-on sentence.
This is the one you said was a run-on sentence?
Yes.
Okay. I get it. Okay. And, but was this reviewed with the Department of Finance, these changes?
These issues have nothing that you see here that the council set back.
Will it be?
Not unless you guys choose not to take action tonight.
Okay.
That will be the.
No, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your last section is section 4.
Coming from somewhere, that's for sure. It's coming from somewhere. Go ahead.
So section 410, write a referendum on ordinances. So this was that fun section we talked about rewriting, didn't rewrite, and now we're getting a proposed change for another sentence for clarification.
This is on page 6?
This is on page 6. So in this one, we're sort of breaking up sentences again. So this one would read, we'd be coming through under registry list. So total number of electors whose names appear upon the last completed registry list, period. And then we would be striking out which petition shall be filed with and starting a new sentence. So it'd start with the town clerk, who shall within 10 days of the petition filing determine whether or not, which makes sense because again, we're running into another one of those run-on sentence situations where we're talking about a petition and then we're getting into state a petition again, where once it's all that's necessary.
And we left the 375 in there, correct?
Oh yes, that nothing's being touched with that.
Does that work for you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the language makes more sense. The reasoning that they stated petition multiple times, I still don't understand. But if I look back through, it's been in the language as far as back as I can go. So I think somebody just wanted to use some extra words so they could bill for them.
And the original language had many other threshold dates that you had to make, didn't it?
Yes, they've changed over time.
Yeah.
As they evolve. Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions?
And towns have different thresholds as well. I have some towns out there that there are 5% threshold, 1% threshold, and a 10% threshold, and they have like 60 days to hold the election. So towns built what they wanted to out of it, but yeah, removing the extra language inside of there and making them 2 separate statements makes much more sense.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners on that item?
And I'm just realizing my apologies is I had the screen on pause and nobody got to see what I was flipping through.
Thank you, James. I was going to say something.
I wish you had. I didn't realize until I looked over.
Go ahead, please. Nancy.
Oh, she was just mentioning how my screen was on pause. So even though I was flipping and reading on my screen, she was only seeing the original language that was first put up there. I'm not even sure what section was.
You don't want to play cards with this guy.
Got to keep it hidden.
Yeah.
All right. So our last discussion item is on page 2 at the bottom. And that would be the discussion about a shall and may definition.
I thought, that they were happy with the town attorney's change of all that.
I thought they were too,
What
and
happened to that?
then they came back with, they feel that they need something defined within it to have an understanding of what each of it means.
Well, I can only tell you, I would go back to what we passed on to the council was a very odd description, but
It was.
I personally did research on it. If anybody else wants to do it, they can find it. Shall and may are two modal auxiliary verbs, which I've never heard of in my life, but apparently they exist. Both of which are used to express permission or obligation to take action. They are interchangeable. And that's why many towns around us aren't concerned about shall or may, because they can pretty much exercise their own judgment of how they want to define it. I don't know what else we could do. We could come back to Kevin's comment on that. Shall means shall and may means may, but I thought that's what the attorney parroted in comments to the council.
Yeah, I think the larger issue that revolves around it is where shall and may are used and how they are used together. I think that's the bigger issue. You know, there's a statement a lot of times, the town council shall do this, but they may do that. So they have a requirement, but an allowance. And I think that's where their
Yeah.
confusions usually
I'm
come
not a
in.
linguist, but if you were to take this to a linguist and if they were to support what these modal auxiliary verbs are, they express both. They express action at the very minimal. They express some kind of action. You shall or you may take action. I mean, the real concentration on this stuff isn't so much a command, but the fact that the council can decide, whoever's reading the charter and authority can decide to take some sort of action, and the action may be no action.
Or a failed action.
Or a failed action, and that's what I think the charter was trying to pass on.
Mr. Chair, I mean, when it comes to that, I mean, I think we'd have to, again, hear how in Connecticut they determine the legal definition of the two. But I think most people understand shall as a command, right?
Right.
This is mandatory, and may generally is
Permissive.
you can do it. It's permissive, right? So
Right.
but whatever. I mean, that may have a particular meaning within the interpretation of charters in Connecticut that's different than that. But I think the normal person on the street out there would interpret it with that kind of common understanding.
Right, I agree. And that's what the attorney recommended. And what happened to it in the conversation that they wouldn't accept it? What are they looking for?
They just feel that they're
You'd have to delete one to please certain people altogether. And everything would be may. You may do this, you may do that, you may not this, you may not that. Or
So-
you go with just shall.
the main issue that
that's
this
what they're
tied
asking.
into, believe it or not, wasn't even part of the charter. So in our code, we have an open space fund. The open space fund says you shall place money into it every year. The council hasn't been doing that. They've cut it out of budgets every year.
So much for the word shall.
So much for the word shall, exactly. So whether that came from management or that came from the council, it's not one that was really affecting the charter. And the interesting part of the discussion they had was, I brought up the fact of possibly adding the definitions into our code, creating a definition section to explain specific issues that come along. The town attorney didn't feel that that would be allowable because your code can't dictate your charter. But the issue wasn't in our charter, it was in our code. If we had seen something in here where it said in the charter itself, we had funds enumerated in there and we said, you shall put $150,000 into this fund every year, I could see, yes, we need something defining shall because they weren't doing it. But because it's in the code, I couldn't see why the definition couldn't be placed in the code as its own sectioning. So that was the impetus between the whole discussion, but somehow it went from the code into it's affecting the charter. And I don't really feel that it was affecting the charter as much as the language that the councils over time have adopted.
Right.
Because that's really their work. That's the ordinance part of the code itself. They're the ones that define how those are worded and how they affect
Well, they create
others.
the interchange between them on their own.
They do.
They do.
As we saw it specifically with that fund.
So that's not much of a defense for asking us to take a look at it.
No, it's not. But I wanted you to understand the
I
reasoning
understand.
behind that
I
conversation.
understand. I mean, it'd be one thing if the charter was written in a way that it would only use the word shall when they had to take an action. They had to but it doesn't read that way.
No.
Throws mays and shays and shells and mays all over the place.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter the topic.
No,
the
they
charter.
could be, you could see both of them, like I said,
Yeah.
together. The council shall, but they may. And that's where the review of it has to determine the initial affected outcome.
I would think that it would be not a good action for this commission to try to determine for the council how they want to interpret things. And, they've had the recommendations both ways, either strictly in a linguistic way, and they got the recommendation of what Kevin's talking about. They don't elect to take either recommendation. So we've made our recommendation. I don't think we should get into some sort of constitutional law argument with them. And I think we'll leave it as is and they can do what they want to do with it. So I don't know if that would require us to reject that or just pass on it.
Yes, we'll actually go through each of the proposed sections and make a vote on each one, whether we're going to accept or deny or reject.
Okay, I would like to try to get some public input on what we just reviewed, but I need an agreement from the commissioners to adjust the agenda, or I can't adjust the agenda to do it.
I believe you could make an adjustment to it to receive public comment. We've been at a loss for having the public available for us to discuss these items. We do only have one individual on.
All right, I'd like to test the commissioners' minds. Does anyone have objection to the chair allowing public participation on what we just reviewed?
No objection.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Hearing none, I'll open the floor to public participation on the items that we reviewed. Any questions or comments you may have, we'd really appreciate it. If you come forth, name your name and address. If you dial in, it's 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247.
And she is live.
No.
Ms. Lyons?
Did I
Rose?
unmute myself?
Yep, you're all set.
Okay, wasn't sure. I was getting my thoughts about me. Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive, and this has got to be one of the most detailed and involved charter revisions that I have sat through, and I'm trying to wrap everything around my head as to the changes. Some of them are just simple yes or no. Others are, especially the shall and the may, throwing me for a loop. As for them being interchangeable words, I don't know how God would feel about that, and that thou shalt not kill and thou may not kill. But I think it goes back to the shall and the may, the discussion about the charter revision. I think you had a big discussion about that as to whether or not the town council shall review the charter every so many years and may create a charter revision commission. It gets very confusing, and you're going to get different opinions from different people, and that's what happens. And no offense, Kevin, when you have attorneys writing things up, they make it so they understand it, but the general layperson is lost in the translation of it. I don't know. I think you've worked so hard on this, and and the open space with the shall provisions shall allocate X amount of dollars. And the 10 years that I was paying attention to the budget, no one even brought that up. They never said we should be doing it, but we're not going to do it because we don't have any money. Not that I can remember. And a few years ago, I think it was Gail Bedraco noticed it and brought it up, and that's when the discussion began. But in any case, that being said, I have one question. And did I understand correctly, or could you explain to me how it's going to work? You've made your recommendations. You sent them to the town council. The town council now has sent back changes or recommendations to you. When it goes back to the town council, if they reject your recommendations, what happens? Is it going to bounce back and forth, or is it, once it goes back to the town council this time with what your recommendations are, that's final, and they make up their mind which ones they're going to put in for the change in charter revision for the referendum? Could you just explain that a little bit to me again?
We would issue our final report, whether we accepted all or some of the changes they've recommended. We would issue our final report tonight to them, and then we would be thanked by the council, and we would cease to exist as a charter revision commission. So they've sent us somewhere along 10 items this evening. So if we elected to accept all 10, in spite of our objections to some issues to keep the process moving along, then that's what eventually, through their discussion, if they elect to go to referendum, they still have to make that decision. That's what the voters would get in some format, and I don't know what that format would be.
And what happens if you? Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Rose. You go
No,
ahead,
I think
Rose.
I think you're going to explain. I wanted to know what happens if you reject something tonight.
Then our change would stand that we recommended. And
Correct.
Okay.
The language that you placed in your first draft of the charter would remain. I do believe, and I would have to look this up to verify, I believe the council with a 2/3 vote may be able to change that as well, even though it's a lot of work that we've done on the back end. I would have to double check that just to be sure. I did bring that book with me, unfortunately.
Somehow I thought that was in the back of my mind too, because the one thing, and I've been listening and doing other things, quite honestly, the finance director's recommendations, did I hear correctly that the council did not like what the finance director had recommended?
no, what I was talking about, Rose, was there were some things in there. Well, for example, the simplest of ones were the description of the general fund appropriations should be general fund appropriations and expenditures. That was important to her.
Right.
To have that language in there. And then it appeared to me, and of course, we're looking at 1,000 passages of this stuff as we go on. She had asked us for a definition of special appropriation, and she was very, very appreciative and took comfort in the fact that the town attorney, to give him credit, had made a recommendation. We discussed it and put it in, and I don't see it here this evening. And I'm not saying that in a critical way. I'm just concerned that she's comfortable with what she's going to land up with.
I
Okay.
take that back, Mr. Chairman. It actually is in there. On page 5, we actually have it as the last line in blue. I missed it completely. I saw the strikeouts for a standing appropriation. We had the special appropriation shall be any appropriation other than the main support appropriation in a budget act or adoption.
Oh,
We do have that in there.
Okay.
Yep. I
I
did miss
did
that
not
line.
see that in there. So it is in Rose. That part's in Rose. I misspoke.
Okay. I guess my main concern would be that everybody that's going to be affected by any changes, whether it be the ones suggested by you or the ones suggested by the town council, that they're all on board with how it's going to end up when it goes to referendum. I hate to keep bringing this up with the first charter revision that I was part of, they had a education circuit breaker and a couple of other items with mandatory referendum. And one of the commission members, during public participation in front of the town council, said that he, although they had sent the recommendations forward to the town council, he wasn't comfortable with the education circuit breaker. And one of the town councilors said to the mayor, let's just put this to bed. So, I mean, if a commission member is uncomfortable with something, or if someone that's going to be affected by these changes is uncomfortable with the wording, I'd like to hear that now and not at a later date. And I'm just not quite sure if everybody involved or affected by this has looked at these changes and signed off and said, that'll work for us.
Well, I know that we encouraged all the department heads that were involved in discussions on these changes from our standpoint, the commission standpoint, to come forward. We had the superintendent of schools, you probably recall that was a lengthy discussion, and they'll have to be settled in a different way. We had Mr. Chapman's input on that. We had the finance director, we had the chief of police, and we had the TPZ. Town planner was there.
Yeah, I was there
So
that night.
we attempted to make an honest, hard effort to include everybody. We had the Commission on Aging's director, she came. So we really did make an honest effort and a hard effort. I have to compliment the commission because it took a lot of time to take their input. And we appreciate Mr. Chapman was open to having every department head came. He talked to every department head about that. I give him credit for that. Don't hesitate to say something if it bothers you or you want to encourage something. So we did do all of that.
I'm not saying that you didn't do all that. What I'm questioning is
I'm just
and
kind
once
of giving a
no. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying to me, but once the town council made their changes and things like that, if there was anything substantial, and like I said, I've been half listening and doing some other things, but I just want to be sure, and not that I'm one vote, but if the department heads and everybody else is on board, that's great. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to say
with the council's changes.
Yeah, I don't want to say that that's true or it's not true. I can't make a judgment on that they're comfortable or happy with it. I can only say that what this commission did, and this commission was very public about its issues on certain things and input that we would contribute to in fulfilling our charge, which were the 13 items, Rose, as you recall, that we went through, plus the 2 that we added with Mr. Chapman's issue, not Mr. Chapman's issue, but with the residency requirement issue for town managers and then the emergency.
There,
yeah.
Okay.
I stutter once in a while, you know, but
yeah, it's coming through loud and clear at this end.
But I can only say that I can read to you what the regulations, the state regulations require when the council gets it. And I'm happy to do that if the commissioners will allow me to do that. And I'll try to be as quick as I can about it. Recommended changes within 15 days of the last public hearing. The town council may recommend changes to the commission draft report, which they've done. If there are town council recommendation changes, the commission shall confer with the town council concerning such recommendations, and the commission may or may not amend or reject the recommendations. So we don't have to do anything with this thing. We can just say you have what we recommended. In either case, the commission shall make its final report within 30 days of receiving the town council recommendation. If there are no recommendations from the town council, the commission report becomes final and the town council shall act on it. I don't know that it specifically talks about what Rose's question was of them.
I'm actually looking at it right now.
Yeah, that's what we need to find out.
And I guess maybe you were speaking quickly, but did I understand correctly? Once the town council makes their recommendations, that the Charter Revision Commission will confer with the town council? Have you asked them their reasons for making these changes?
They called me in as chairman when they were going through them. They hadn't solidified all of their changes, and then they sent the paperwork out, so I reviewed it.
So you individually, did the commission members also see the reasoning why they changed some of your recommendations or added new recommendations?
Yeah, they have it. I don't know if you have a copy of this, Rose. It starts off, this is the sheet with their changes, which is sort of a duplicate of what we made our changes on. It says intent and purpose of the proposed revision, review request. So they state their purpose for sending these changes down.
No, I don't have that.
Okay, we can get you that or
Okay.
post it to the
All right.
website. So we're aware of that.
I don't think there's
But
much more you can do.
Pardon me?
I said, I don't think there's much more you can do. You've worked as hard as you can on this, and it is what it is, as they say.
No.
So what I do have on screen, right now, we are in the step 6, step 7 stage. We gave our recommendations. The council responded within their 30 days, made recommendations back to you as a secondary review. They have up to 15 days to review those and either approve or reject. So your final report you're giving is full language.
Right.
Whether or not, and I would have to look through the statutes to see whether or not they can strike out individual sections of the proposed charter language is another question. But from the way I read this, it's either approve or reject the proposed changes, not a proposed change.
Right.
So I would assume that your final report is for them to accept and then break down whether they're going to send it to referendum as a single question or multiple questions based upon the change sections.
And then the charter revision proposals must be initiated either by a 2/3 vote of the town council. Is that correct?
Where are you at?
I'm taking it from the regulations, from the state. Step 1 of initiation, charter revision proposals.
Oh, that's stage 1. That's when we were
Yeah.
created. Yeah, that one is a 2/3 vote.
Okay.
Okay, so they have to, they'll have to approve or reject in whole.
Correct.
Not
If they're going to
piecemeal.
place it forward as a complete single question on a full charter, that would be an acceptance or rejection of the entire
Yeah, but I
charter.
think Rose's question was, can they take a commission item versus their own and reject ours, would impose theirs?
No, what's coming to them is the final report.
All
They
right,
would
so
have to
they've
reject
gotta
the
work
final
off our
report.
final report, Rose.
Yeah.
Okay, you threw me with that
So-
2/3 vote you were talking about, James.
Yeah, that 2/3 vote
Did you-
that he was speaking of is actually the initiation of the Charter Revision Commission, that what we did in February of 2022.
Yeah, no, I thought that you said you were going to look into whether they could override.
Yeah,
Your
I've got to
rejection.
look in both 790 and 7190 and 7191. I need to look into those statutes just to see if there's
To
any
be sure.
provision for them to strike individually from the
I mean,
language.
can't the town attorney tell us that?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking with him tomorrow on another item. So
All right, well, that
So I am
aside,
correct in thinking that they could, there's a possibility if the town attorney says they have that right, that they could
Correct.
override your rejection.
correct.
Okay.
I think,
All right.
I think the ability, from what I read from the state statutes, not to muddy the waters, is that they can elect not to go to referendum.
They can choose not to.
They can,
send it.
they can shut the whole thing down if they wanted to.
Oh,
If they
correct,
rejected
right.
it, the referendum would be
Yeah.
dead. They can hold it up to 16 months
Right,
as well.
so we could be many months away from, I
Passage.
think their intent is to go in November, but I'm not,
That is currently the council's intent.
Okay.
With any luck, if we have completed our review and give our recommendations back, I'm hopeful that they will act at their August 23rd meeting.
are there any
So
other
once you
items?
give
that
your-
we-
So
Go
once you
ahead,
give your
Rose.
final report, there's no more back and forth. The commission's dissolved, and that's it.
Yes.
What they choose to do with it, go forward, hold it,
Yes.
do whatever.
Right.
It's
Yes,
up to
that's in
them.
the, that's right, in the
Yeah.
council's hand. This will be our final report this evening.
And upon acceptance
And
by
upon
the council,
acceptance of that,
or rejection, I should say.
yeah,
Either one, the
we're moved
commission
out.
would be dissolved at
Yeah,
that
we're
point.
dissolved either way, whether they accept them or reject them.
You might want to think about, I forget whether it was Peter Borman or Alan Nafis, that after they served on 2 charter revision commissions, they told them if there was ever another one to lose their phone numbers and don't call them. Yeah, I can't believe how
Okay,
many meetings you've had. Thank you very much for answering my
All
questions.
right, Rose, have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, I'm going to call for a motion to accept the changes recommended by the council with a footnote that we understand that the Board of Parks and Recreation 11 number is not going to be disturbed at this point.
Correct.
And that there'll be a further comment that the commission would strongly recommend that they do what Kevin suggested, have input from the entire board, maybe come in before them and allow that board to discuss it. I believe Mr. Patalico is still chairman, and perhaps they can reach out to Mr. Patalico and Mr. Woods, who's retiring, to have those discussions. So I'll entertain a motion. Nancy, would you make a motion?
Individually, will be by section, so it'll be section 404, encompassing
Okay,
604.
Nancy, would you
through
make a
608.
motion that section 404, page 1,
Yep, section 404, page 1, I motion to vote.
to accept
Accept.
the
Yep.
change? Okay.
Accept.
A second?
Sure, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Borup,
Aye.
Commissioner Capello,
Aye.
Commissioner Harpy,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay, Nancy, would you make a motion on 604, 605, and 606?
Motion 604, 605, 606, and 608. A
And
motion to accept.
608, thank you. Just testing. Is there a second to that? I'll second the motion. Any discussion? I'll take a roll call, please.
Commissioner Borup,
Nay.
Commissioner Capello,
Yay, accept.
Commissioner Harpy,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, Nancy, would you make a motion on section 711, Department of Police, section C? Review removal of updated dog warden to statutory animal control officer.
Motion for 711, Department of Police, section C, I accept.
Is there a second to the
Second.
motion? Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borup,
Aye.
Commissioner Capello,
Aye.
Commissioner Harpy,
Aye, yeah,
motion
yeah.
carries.
Commissioner Capello, would you make a motion on section 608, Commission on Aging and Disabled, review recommend removal of proposed language outlining commission duties as included in draft report of draft charter.
Recommend to add as ordinance.
Recommended.
Oh, yep, 608, Commission on Aging and Disabled, I motion yay. To accept.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borup,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy,
Yes.
motion carries.
Commissioner Capello, would you make a motion? This is the bugaboo one here.
Yeah. Full
Can we hold
charter.
off on
Well-
further charter language on shall in May in the charter? We don't really have anything to offer here beyond our
Right,
original
yeah.
recommendation. So,
Motion to reject.
yeah,
proposed
motion to
definition.
reject.
Motion to reject. I
Is there a
reject.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bora,
Yes to reject.
Commissioner Capello,
Reject.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes to reject.
Rejection passes.
Page 3, Commissioner Capello, would you make a motion on 412 removals and suspensions? Review language and update to indicate the mayor and a member of the opposing party when an individual requests for a private hearing, section C412C.
Yes, motion to approve for 12 removal and suspensions.
Second.
Is there a second to the motion?
Yep.
I'll
Second.
make this second. Roll call.
Commissioner Bora,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Commissioner Cavillo, would you make a motion on C10, Department of Senior Disabled Services, review language to add municipal agent for elderly and disabled persons?
Yes, I motion to accept.
Okay, is there a second for the
Second.
motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bora,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Commissioner Cavillo, would you make a motion 403 organization, review vote language and possible revisions to read and only one vote? Nathan Hale.
Yes. I motion to accept for 3 organization. Yes, accept.
Second.
Second, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bora,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes. Commissioner Capella, would you make a motion on 408 obligatory referendum and ordinance, review language in last sentence and consider revising to remove run-on language such as bond or note?
Yes, I
Second.
accept.
Is there a
All
second?
right. Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bora,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes.
Motion
Commissioner
carries.
Capella, would you make a motion on 4C410, right of referendum on ordinances, review proposed changes to existing language to clarify filing review process, register list, the town clerk, who shall within 10 days of the petition filing determine whether. That's new language added. Is there a second?
Yes. Yes, I accept.
Is there a
Second.
second on, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bora,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes.
Motion carries. That is all of the changes for this evening.
God.
Okay. Let's see. I made the recommendations of town revisions and draft language, submission of the final report and final charter language to the town council.
Let's see. We did that one. We've been moving along. So at this point, based upon the proposed changes that you're putting forward, motion to accept the draft report, which will effectively be this language, incorporated into your original report, and into the draft charter language itself for submission to the council on the 23rd.
Okay. Kevin, would you make a motion for submission of the final report and final charter language to the town council?
Yeah. So moved.
Second,
I second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bora,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Now the hard work.
Next item up here is the approval of minutes, February 28th. Special meeting, March 9th, public hearing, March 15th, 22 special meeting, March 29th, 2022 special meeting, April 28th, 2022 special meeting, May 3rd, 2022, regular meeting, June 1st, 2022, special meeting, June 13th, 2022, and special meeting in June 22nd, 2022, special meeting.
I'm going to ask you to add one into that. It was negated, omitted, I'm sorry, from the listing. It's actually the public hearing that we also held on June 13th.
So none of these, we didn't look at these before?
I don't know if any of you have looked at them. I did send it out in the email to reference to the webpage to view each
No, I
one.
mean, as far as approving.
Nope, we have not touched any. We were so busy with basic language, we did not approve
right,
any minutes
okay.
throughout the time period.
We're special.
We figured we'd wait for the best for the last.
Okay, okay, Commissioner Capello, would you make a motion, based on the dates?
motion to
times, and
approve.
months that I read?
I
Okay, a
motion-
second? I'll make a second to it. Roll call?
Commissioner Borup,
Yes, sure.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Harpy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
When you have an opportunity to review these, if you don't have them, make sure each commissioner gets it. And you see something in there that is an issue to you, please notify the clerk. And we'll revisit that page. But for now, they all stand approved. Is that fair enough?
Fair enough.
Yeah,
And
that's
if
fair.
anything does. Yep, I
Okay.
can always add a clerk's note to the minutes.
It's a lot. And there's somebody on vacation, one of the commissioners, and I'm gonna put myself at risk if I say much more. So we gotta move this along.
My kids are dying to go out to dinner.
I can feel the heat. She's a good boss, though. Okay, public participation on agenda items via Zoom application or phone, 2 minutes time limit per speaker, 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247.
And Miss Lyons is available.
Rose Lyons, 46 Alton Drive. James, I'm confused enough without the *9 and the *6 messing me up here. But in any case, thank you. I just one last thing. I wanted to thank all of you for volunteering your time to serve on this commission. I know it hasn't been the most fun for a summer-long project for you, and I know your families have been missing you, and it's taking time away from them. And I, as one resident, appreciate it. And James, I know that you're always on the ball with every single board and commission, but this is one that's really kept you on your toes, and with everything else you have going on, I don't know how you do it. But once again, my sincere thanks, and thank you for your patience with my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you,
member of the
Rose.
public?
Thank you. And I'll remember what?
No, he was asking if there was anybody else online.
Oh,
Comments by commissioners. Commissioner Capello.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Kevin?
No, thank you. I appreciate the cooperation of all the commissioners. I thought it was a good process, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for doing the Lions work.
Thank you, sir, for all your contributions. I'd just like to thank the commission as a whole and the town clerk for the cooperation that I received as chair as we took on a big task here. And I think the residents of Newington in the long term will appreciate the work that we put into this. And it's a situation where so few do so much for so many. And I hope they will appreciate that. I'll entertain a motion to
I have
adjourn.
one more for you.
Yes, sir.
The mayor is online.
Oh, Mayor. I want to
Hi,
thank the
Mr.
mayor as
Chairman.
well for her help.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you go ahead, Mayor.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch the beginning of the meeting. I did catch the ending. I just wanted to say thank you to the entire commission. I know that you gave a lot of hours, not just in meetings, but behind the scenes in reviewing all the information and considering it all. I know how much time and effort this took from all of you, and I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate the collaboration between all members of the commission, as well as the chairman with the council, and making sure that we had all the information we needed. And I look forward to the council taking action on this at our next meeting. And I just overall just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for attending all the meetings and cooperating with us at every point. We appreciate it.
My
I'll
pleasure.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
7:58.
Good night
Yeah.
now. Take
Thank you.
care.
Good night,
Have a
everyone.
great night, everyone.
Take care, guys. Done and done.